Look, I know I sound completely insane right now, not least of which because you saw the movie, both on Netflix and the sing-along version in theaters. How many times have you heard those songs so far? Oh, and just for good measure, you also checked out negative reviews about this movie, and they're not good. At best, they don't like it because it's popular. At worst, you're wondering how they haven't been deplatformed already. So what am I doing here? Well, I was ruminating on why Rumi was unable to complete the Hunwood seal. Huntrix was about to perform the new single Golden in order to make that happen, until Rumi loses her ability to sing and demon marks start appearing on her body.
One of the hunters bears my mark, but I have no control over her.
This is good. This means she has shame.
I mean, that's certainly how Genu got his marks. He wanted to pull his family out of poverty, but he made a literal deal with the devil to make that happen. But the source of Rumi's demon marks are a different story.
Cover those up. You only have those because
My dad was a demon?
So is the demon curse a genetic thing they can pass down to offspring? And well, yeah, it's called a metaphor. Do you not know how movies work? And yes, all three members of Huntrix have rather storied upbringings. Zoe grew up in Burbank, California, which has very literal cultural similarities with South Korea. And Mira's in a very similar boat, just in a more domestic manner. The environments they grew up in weren't exactly the most ideal for what their lives look like now as not just pop stars, but K-pop stars. Pop music isn't really defined by instrumentation or style. Its only real signifier is that, at least in the present moment, it gets the most attention. But K-pop goes one step further by adding a nationalist signifier to the genre, meaning that it's deeply connected to defining what a Korea is and how that's different from a Japan or a China. Which does sound confusing, considering the amount of Western influences that are present in K-pop. You had like 5 English words in Gangnam Style, and now fast forward to today, and you have Latin in the opening of Your Idol. The reason why I say it has a nationalist signifier is mainly due to the sheer amount of top-down level control the media companies have over the industry, which has been subject to rightful criticism of the practices, not least of which because so many of their idols decide to take the worst way out. And just speaking of Korean politics in general, chaebols especially have such a huge amount of leverage over the Korean government that I'm honestly kind of annoyed by how rarely Western cyberpunk IPs take place in South Korea. If you want to stay in East Asia but are tired of Tokyo and Hong Kong, come to Seoul. Even the city flags look like company logos. It's honestly really hard to quantify how much influence corporations have on defining what Korea is. Another problem I should also mention is that the peoples of these countries, not just Korea, exhibit a shocking level of racism to virtually everybody. For example, in 2024, Michelle Steele, a Korean woman born in Seoul, was running for re-election as a federal House rep against the Vietnamese-American Derek Tran in a district not too far away from Burbank, California. In that campaign, Michelle Steele released flyers putting Tran next to the communist hammer and sickle and Mao Zedong, a Chinese figure, and claimed that she herself is more Vietnamese than Tran.
Can you explain to you the difference between you and your opponent?
You know what? I think I am more Vietnamese than my opponent. My opponent might have Vietnamese name, but you know what? I understand Vietnamese community. You know, I always wear Ao Dai out there.
Steele also endorsed fellow Korean House Rep Young Kim in a neighboring district who promised that she would keep the border safe from dangerous illegal immigrants and to lower Californian state gas prices somehow. When Donald Trump began his special military operation with Iran that caused the price of spice to absolutely skyrocket, Kim voted against the House War Powers Resolution. So it's only a minor miracle that not only are Mira and Zoe popular celebrities despite their upbringings being public knowledge, but in fact are celebrated because of those things.
Mira's my favorite. She's the visual and lead dancer of Huntrix. Nobody can move like Mira.
Apparently, she was a black sheep of her family.
We're here for Zoe!
She's a rapper and lyricist.
She grew up in America, somewhere called Burbank, USA.
In fact, the in-universe Korea seems to be a paradise. The Huntrix members live on a high floor of the Avengers Tower with plenty of floor space. They have no restrictions on their diet. Their one manager is extremely easygoing. They can schedule things as they please. And overall have a lot of agency in their lives. And given the fact that, as the guardians of this paradise, Zoe and Mira don't seem to be in a rush to finish the honeymoon seal, the demon threat seems to be hardly a concern. At least until the Saja boys show up. And even when you think that the movie is going to make fun of the more regressive elements of Korean culture, like herbal medicine, The doctor diagnoses Rumi with clairvoyant accuracy simply through looking.
Very strange. You have lots of walls up.
Whoa.
He's so good, right?
So many walls.
Walls? I don't have walls.
Yeah, you do. He is kind of good.
So the massive problems of the real-world K-pop industry, or Korea in general, simply don't exist in this movie. The only conflict present in this story is centered around Rumi. Unlike the other two members of Huntrix, Rumi's past is a secret to all but one person, and that person is still around in Rumi's life at great detriment. You could argue that Celine is the real antagonist of the story. Guima is more like a force of nature. Celine is the embodiment of what Rumi is really fighting against. It's also implied that Rumi is the sole in-universe writer of the song Golden, which means that Mira and Zoe are simply interpreting the lyrics as readers, not as authors. Though make no mistake, the movie is clearly trying to draw a line here to say that the struggles of all three protagonists are of the same. And just to drive it home, Maggie Kang named Rumi after her real-life daughter that she had with her husband Radford Seacrest. Maggie Kang isn't just one of the directors of K-pop Demon Hunters, she's also one of the writers, and the one who created the story. She was way more involved in this movie than your typical director in your typical film. And if you're going to tell a story revolving around a singular culture, where the main characters have been assigned as the defenders of that culture, despite being outsiders themselves, and then you insert your own half-Korean, half-white kid to the front row, well, if the movie's not about racism, you tell me what the movie's about then. And because there are no other conflicts present in this movie, there's no other interpretations you could pull out of the film, otherwise, you're basically writing fanfiction. The mixed race analogy is the only complication in an otherwise simple movie about good and evil, hunters versus demons. And yet, Rumi doesn't see demons as just enemies, which is understandable. Reaffirming the belligerence of demons, by extension, hurts Rumi, because it's an attack on her identity. She can't change who her parents were, neither can Mira, and Zoe can't be any less Korean American either. Plus, that has no bearing on whether or not Rumi herself is evil. And she clearly isn't. And to expel that part of you that is inconvenient, that is not self-acceptance, that's just rejection.
It's not that simple.
But I am a mistake. Have been since the moment I was born. So, I have to believe.
Plus, could we really trust Celine at her word?
When the whole moon is sealed, all the demons will be gone from this world, and so will your patterns.
When Zoe and Mira suggest that they perform Takedown instead of Golden, Rumi hesitates, but she still can't say why because the stigma is just that strong. When she forcibly has her demon marks revealed to the public, it also comes as a big shock to her own band members. So Rumi has to step up even more than she already has. The movie puts what it sounds like at the climax of the movie where Huntrix banishes all the demons away. And when all is said and done, Rumi's demon marks are still there, but extremely faint. Well, that certainly complicates matters. So Celine wasn't completely lying. Finishing the Hunmoon seal didn't do nothing to Rumi. The demon marks are noticeably less saturated in color. It looks more like her skin is recovering from burn injuries or something. Didn't Rumi also offer Jinu a second chance by having his marks cleansed as well?
You can be on this side when the Honmoon is sealed. Away from the demon world, away from Guima.
Was there some truth to that? When Guima turns human souls into demons, it's pretty much a total conversion. But that is not at all what the case with people like Jinu, who got turned into a demon Ship of Theseus style, because he was trying to pull his family out of poverty. That's literally it. That was his only crime, and they banished him without even a second thought. He can't be the only human turned into a demon this way. So, can they all be turned back into humans? Why did the demons have to be banished in the first place? Why can't the Hunmoon seal be adjusted so that only Guima is banished? Yes, obviously demons as a whole were of course a threat to Koreans for centuries at this point, but we know they weren't acting on their own accord. They were operating under the influence of their creator.
That's all demons do. Feel our shame, our misery. It's how Guima controls us. Do you not hear him in your ear?
But if the demons are still inherently evil on their own, then why did Rumi's mom, a demon hunter, decide to have a kid with a demon? Are there more half-demon children out there?
When we lost your mother, I swore to protect all that was left of her. But I never thought that would be a child like you.
And from Celine's perspective, why did she train Rumi to become a demon hunter? If the demon threat was that critical, why take that risk? Why not just find someone else?
Every generation A new trio of hunters is chosen to fulfill our ultimate duty.
So, why? If the demons are unilaterally bad, then why are there so many counterexamples proving that's false? If the demons can be redeemed, why do all of them have to be banished permanently with no second chances? Why is Rumi the only exception to this? What makes her special? Is it because she's a demon hunter? Is Rumi just one of the good ones?
Celine, do hunters kill all demons?
Yes,
So everything that has patterns?
cover those up. You only have those because
My dad was a demon?
you're not one of them, Rumi. You're a hunter, just like your mother was.
You know what? I'm not sure. The movie doesn't really provide any concrete answers to a lot of these questions. Most of the nitty-gritty details of the plot as a whole are left vague or just sped run through.
Yours are a reminder, too, of a shame of your own.
Which, to be fair, is what a lot of kids' movies are like, especially animated kids' movies. They typically aren't made to be in-depth. Maybe I've just been spoiled by the amount of other kids' movies I've seen that do grapple with themes of rejecting a mold that society tries to put you in. Surely we can have higher standards for movies made for all ages, right? Because let's not forget that all these kids who watched K-pop Demon Hunters aren't going to be kids forever. For the adults watching this video, I'm sure there's a lot of media that you're nostalgic of, with some of them aging poorly. Maybe they've aged so poorly, in fact, that you're wondering how the creators weren't cancelled on the spot. What are the chances that one of these kids rewatch this movie later in life and notice these details? Are we going to have this conversation again in 5-10 years' time? Especially if you put it into the historical context that this movie was released in. Do we even want to remember what else has been happening lately? K-pop Demon Hunters was released in June 2025, and at that point, I've already personally developed an extreme allergic reaction to anything remotely contradictory or problematic. This is why I'm so critical about the in-universe logic of this movie. K-pop Demon Hunters is ultimately a fantasy genre, so the writers can more or less construct the rules of this world as they see fit. So you would think that they would make it a top priority of sticking the landing in a kids' movie about being mixed race, where every component of this movie supports not just self-acceptance, but social acceptance of the other. But if you're going to skip over a few steps and not even try to paper over the cracks, that leaves the door open to a very different message. And yes, obviously you have the songs, right? They support that message, but they weren't made in a vacuum. They're part of a movie, they're part of a musical. And there is a massive narrative dissonance between the songs and the musical that it's part of. Why is that? It's even more frustrating considering that, in a way, this movie is kind of using the Beauty and the Beast trope, just kind of on its head. If the original Shrek can be considered a subversion of that trope by having the beauty also be a beast herself, then K-pop Demon Hunters does the same but goes the other way. By the end of the movie, Rumi is able to look just as good as she did from the beginning. Not to mention the fact that not a single person, Mira, Zoe, Celine, nobody, ever acknowledged Rumi's demon marks after the fact, let alone apologize to her for anything.
Rumi, I'm so happy you didn't, die.
What does it say that K-pop Demon Hunters is now, to date, the most commercially and critically successful thing that Netflix has ever distributed? And for those of you unfamiliar with Korean culture and history, how much did you learn about that stuff from this movie? Because most of it is just aesthetics. You see ancient Korea in the opening, you got the magpie and the tiger. You see hanboks, but after the opening, only the antagonists are wearing them. The singers fighting demons is sort of a thing, but obviously the movie takes some creative liberties with that fable. So, hold on. An incredible musician carrying a generational talent is under threat by an ancient evil but tragic immortal being who's also a hive mind trying to assimilate a culture with their own song and dance? I think, unfortunately for people like me, the vampires already got inside the house, or in this case, the zombies.
This award is not about success, it's about resilience.
When Maggie Kang said that she wanted something related to her Korean heritage, I think she was being earnest. And in her defense, she wasn't exactly spoiled for choice. What is there for us North American golpyos to relate back to a place that's literally an entire hemisphere away? Should you find the time and money to do some immersive language learning, you're basically starting from scratch because English has basically no grammatical similarities with Korean. We've all heard stories about Koreans rising above and beyond to meet the occasion, but As amazing as the Admiral was, it's unlikely that you'll feel any emotional connection to his efforts. The war was over 600 years ago, after all, and even if you try to look into some more recent historical figures, access to their works can be shockingly difficult. Not to mention the fact that he may or may not have been killed by the South Korean government. Oh god, how could we forget? South Korea. South Korea. Do we even want to talk about what's happening up there? Is reunification even worth it at this point? Contemporary history of South Korea hasn't been very pleasant either. If a president isn't enacting martial law, or letting a cult friend influence politics, or embezzling money, or all of the above, they had a habit of killing their own citizens. This information seems to be news to Maggie Kang. I've always wanted to see an animated film set in Korean culture. As a Korean person who was born in Korea but grew up in North America, it's been surreal, but also incredible to see our culture just become so cool. It's cheesy, but I think it's true. Growing up, everyone knew Chinese and Japanese culture well, but Koreans were not even on the map. Yeah, probably because they had to deal with other stuff at the time. And just on a day-to-day basis, there's a lot of problems too. Like, there's a reason why South Koreans made things like Kisengju and Ojingo game. And that's beside the point. K-pop blows both of these guys completely out of the water. It's incredibly successful and popular even to people who don't even know how to locate the peninsula on a globe. It's rivaling Japanese anime just in terms of the scale of export. And what is K-pop Demon Hunters doing except accelerating that further?
People made fun of me liking K-pop, but now everyone's singing our song and all the Korean lyrics, and I'm so proud.
And hey, maybe that's a good thing. Maybe I was just being too harsh. Chances are, this video isn't going to change the fact that you enjoyed the movie, enjoyed the songs. K-pop Demon Hunters has both the numbers and the accolades to prove its insane popularity. Maybe that's it. Maybe that's the reason why I dislike it so much. Maybe I'm just too American to really understand it and see it on its own terms. Maybe it's because I'm fully Korean instead of being mixed race. Maybe the sequel will fix everything that I've complained about. Maybe this movie will solidify itself as a cultural staple for generations to come, regardless of how I feel about it. All I know is, I don't want to be a part of it.
And for those of you who look like me, I'm so sorry that it took us so long to see us in a movie like this. But it is here. And that means that the next generations don't have to go longing. This is for Korea and for Koreans everywhere.